The Cardinals have a season-high mark above 500, and they have Nolan Gorman to thank for it. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Shafe Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you in the evening hours of July 2nd, 2024. Appreciate everybody for having a little bit of patience with me yesterday, as I did take a night off from the podcast on my 30th birthday. I promise that'll be the only time I turn 30, so hopefully not too many more nights off from the podcast. There will be time to time the need to take off, but with the off day on Monday, too, in particular, wasn't a lot new to add, so we took a little bit of time off, but tonight we're back at it, talking about a Cardinals win as they open the series in Pittsburgh in a nice way. 7-4 winners were the Cardinals over the Pirates. We'll talk on tonight's episode of the pod. Kyle Gibson, who made his return to the rotation, and the first time we saw him after the back issue down in Miami, it wasn't very quality. Tonight, though, was a little bit better of a story, especially the way that he started the outing. Ran into a little bit of trouble in the fifth inning. We will chronicle that and talk about the rest of the Cardinal bullpen as Ryan Helsley was able to slam the door for his league-leading 31st save of the season, which sets a new franchise mark for save total before the All-Star break. Ryan Helsley stands alone now at 31, passing Lee Smith after tying him just a couple of days ago. So we'll talk pitching, and we'll talk that Cardinal offense that set the stage for a nice win on Tuesday evening. Nolan Gorman breaking out of his slump after Ollie Marmol predicted it actually pregame, which you may say, oh, not that impressive for the manager to basically continue to have faith in one of his players, but kind of a bold proclamation by Ollie that ended up coming to fruition almost immediately. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by that, as well as going up and down the lineup to tell you who had big nights for the Cardinals other than Nolan Gorman, as the Cardinal offense wrapped out 13 hits and 7 runs in the game. Cardinals getting the win, improving to 44-40 on the season, which is a season-high watermark for the Cardinals in terms of their record relative to the 500 mark. Cardinals are 4 games above 500 for the first time all season, which begs the question, can this Cardinals team find a way to take off even further and go on a little bit of a run prior to the All-Star break? I definitely see the possibility for it happening. I'll talk about what I think needs to take place in order for that to come to fruition for the Redbirds. And then, of course, before we get out of here on tonight's episode of B-Shafe Daily, we will talk down on the farm, as we will continue to do now for the foreseeable future, as I believe we might have our first sponsorship as it pertains to a running B-Shafe Daily segment. So stay tuned for that. It's in the works. Nothing finalized just yet, but we're on our way to potentially having a sponsor for Down on the Farm, which is really exciting. And if you're out there, you have a business, you're interested in becoming a partner or a sponsor of the podcast, my goodness, slide into my DMs in any way possible, and we will get you set up. I really do appreciate all the support out there, including our channel members, which is a group now more than 20 strong. If you're interested in becoming a channel member, just like Debbie did the other day, becoming our newest member of the B-Shafe Daily gang. That was an update within the last couple of days, so really appreciate Debbie for hopping on board, as well as our group of channel members that have been with me for a month now since we started the program. Damian, Justin, Darren, Scotty, Jen, Dominic, Ken, Brett, Andrew, Austin, Jared, Rena, Connor, Brock, Miles have all been part of the gang for at least a month now. So appreciate you guys for supporting. If you'd like to join the channel membership, the link will be in the description to this video. A couple people have said, oh, I can't find it. Hey, let me know in a comment and I will get you set up, because I really do appreciate the support out there. What you guys are doing, listening and becoming members and all this incredible stuff that I never would have imagined. It's allowing this podcast to really become a legitimate part of my career and the chance for it to grow and to potentially someday become a legitimate source of income for me that I can continue to pursue and invest more time in. And that's just incredible, because when I started the podcast 4 years ago, I honestly didn't know what I was doing and didn't know where it might lead. But I'm just humbled, honestly, by how far we've come. So appreciate you guys. Enough about me, though. Let's go ahead and hop into the conversation surrounding tonight's Cardinals win, as the Redbirds get one over the Pirates to start this series off. 7-4 winner, and the offense really did carry the load in this one. But I want to highlight Kyle Gibson before we even jump into the conversation about Nolan Gorman, because for as much as Kyle Gibson's finishing line on the night didn't look particularly impressive, if you just look at the 4 runs allowed and the 5 innings pitched, Kyle Gibson started off this game like gangbusters. those first 4 innings, man, he was unbelievable. And for the night, Kyle Gibson ends up with 8 strikeouts. When the Cardinals brought him in, the idea was not necessarily that they would pick up a good tick mark on their strikeout ratio. It was something we said in the offseason that the Cardinals really needed, but I figured when they signed Kyle Gibson, that was going to be something that was put into a different category, right? His signing was into a different bucket entirely because strikeouts just really haven't been, over the course of Kyle Gibson's career, something that was a prominently featured attribute. You know, he had some seasons here and there where he would muster up 179 Ks. He did that back in 2018 with the Minnesota Twins. And then coming off of his season with Baltimore, 157 strikeouts was pretty close. I think that was the third best that he ever had in his career. So you're not talking about a 200 strikeout candidate, but you are talking about a guy capable of eating 190 innings, as he did with Baltimore last year. And by virtue of pitching so many innings, you do, even if you're not a big strikeout guy, tend to rack up more of those counting stats as you go along. But if you look at the ratios of it, Kyle Gibson throughout his career has not been a very high strikeout ratio pitcher. His Ks per 9 last year just 7.4, and for his career prior to tonight, 7.2 strikeouts per 9. So a lot of times we look at guys that we consider to be high-quality strikeout pitchers. You're talking about at least 1 K per inning, which would put you at a 9 Ks per 9 innings pitched sort of ratio. Kyle Gibson for the season coming in actually a tick above his career average for the season, 7.9 Ks per 9, and that's a number that went up. I imagine he might be at the 8.0 level or above after striking out 8 Pittsburgh Pirates over 5 innings in the win on Tuesday night. It was the 5th inning that you saw Kyle Gibson get into a little trouble, and that's where obviously the outing goes off the rails for him. He allows a couple of home runs in that inning, and I swear I had a premonition with 2 runners on base and Jack Sawinski at the plate. I just thought, man, this would be a really inopportune time for a homer, because when the history books would look back on this outing by Kyle Gibson, if he gives up this home run right now, it's not going to really appreciate the degree to which he was dominating in this game early on. And sure as shooting, that's what happened. Sawinski, who has really struggled this year for the Pirates, he's got a sub-200 batting average. He's got a sub-600 OPS. Those things are still true even after today, in which he went 3 for 3 with that 3-run homer. Even after all that, he's still hitting 180 with a 578 OPS. But he had Kyle Gibson in the Cardinals' number today. The 3-run shot for Sawinski made it, at the time, 6-3 Cardinals. And then later on in that same inning, Andrew McCutchen, he's been known to do that to a pitcher or two throughout his career, got Kyle Gibson for another one. And suddenly this was a 6-4 game. I didn't necessarily have a premonition about McCutchen's homer. Did have one about Sawinski, but I'll also say, and there's no way to prove this, it's irrelevant now, but when Nolan Gorman stepped to the plate with the bases loaded, I thought he might be about to do something here. It just seemed like it was time to go. And how many weeks have I been saying? B-Shape Daily listeners can chime in the comments and know that this is exactly what I've said. Move him down to number 8. I'm cool with it. Do I want Nolan Gorman benched definitively, indefinitely? No, I've said pretty consistently that I don't think I'd be in favor of that. And obviously you see why tonight with the swing to the opposite field even that Nolan Gorman connects on, hits the grand slam, ends up being a huge difference-making swing in this game for the Cardinals. The reason that you can't give up on Nolan Gorman, besides the 17 homers that he's hit now this season, I know what the rest of the numbers are. They're not pretty. The batting average, not pretty. The OPS, not pretty. But the reason you can't give up on him is because he has the ability to do something like that. And if you take a Brandon Crawford and stick him at second base because you're just saying we got to get Gorman out of the lineup or we got to send him to Memphis, you know, if you put Brandon Crawford in there or you put Dylan Carlson and his 500 OPS in there or 515 OPS or whatever it's at, or you take Jose Fermin and his 390 OPS or whatever it's been, if you consider sticking those guys into those spots in the order because you're so fed up with Nolan Gorman's struggles, I can understand it from an emotional perspective, but from a logical one, I just don't buy into it. I say put him down at 8. That's about as low as I could possibly imagine to put him in the lineup when you do have Michael Ciani in there still, so it's not going to make any sense necessarily to have Gorman lower than Ciani, right? Like that's going to be the lowest he can go is 8. But that's exactly where I'd put him until he demonstrates over a consistent period of time that he has found his stroke back. And I want to give credit to Ollie Marmol because the way that today's lineup kind of played out for the Cardinals, it basically ignored, for the most part, the notion of, you have to go with right, left, and try to be balanced within your lineup. Ollie basically gave up on that today, and for good reason. Now, I think you had it for the most part in terms of guys batting 1 through 6 in the order, but Wilson Contreras, I think right now is the best candidate to bat third for the Cardinals. Goldschmidt was the cleanup man. They went right in that regard with Wynn, Burleson at the top. I had no problem with that. Normally, we have seen them go right, left, all the way through 1 through 5. And in this case, you're stacking your two righties there because Goldie has been heating up a little bit. Look, I think if there were a lot of candidates lower in the order that would make sense to bat cleanup, I would not be stumping for Paul Goldschmidt to remain in that spot and saying that it was basically a fine move by Ollie Marmol today. And really, I think when you look at the numbers recently by Goldie, you can take it over his last 15 games. He's still hovering just above a 700 OPS over that stretch, and over his last 7 games, he's actually dipped below a 700 OPS. So I wouldn't have any problem necessarily moving him down. But I like where Brendan Donovan is batting 5th, and he had another big game tonight, going 3 for 4, driving in another key run later on in this game for the Cardinals, as the early runs came on a Burleson homer, 2-run shot, and then a Gorman home run, obviously the grand slam. But I like Brendan Donovan batting 5th. I just think that's the kind of mojo that you maybe don't mess with too much. But the way he's performing right now as an RBI threat, you could make the case that he is deserving of moving into that cleanup spot in the order. And maybe you do go Wynn, Burleson, Contreras, Donovan, but then you're still going to eventually come home to roost on that consecutive righties in the lineup. For now, I would make the case that Matt Carpenter, who's been playing a fair bit without obvious options to play DH instead, Herrera's on the shelf, obviously Nootbaar on the shelf. I would potentially consider when Lars Nootbaar returns, which should be very soon after he's been ramping up a rehab, the DH spot probably then goes to Burleson. Nootbaar slides into right field, and I would maybe consider at that point bumping Donovan up to cleanup, and then Goldschmidt could be down at number 5, and I probably slide Arenado to 7 and slot maybe Lars Nootbaar right in there at number 6. And I would normally say it's nice to have the right, left, right if you can have it. But with Wynn now the right-handed batter at cleanup, I'm not moving Burleson out of the 2-hole, not even when Lars Nootbaar returns, because I don't think we have seen a sustained approach from Lars Nootbaar that mirrors what we're getting right now from Alec Burleson. Another home run tonight, his 13th of the season. He goes 2 for 5, driving in those 2 runs. Mason Wynn scoring a run in this game as the leadoff man, continuing to do a nice job. 2 for 5 game for the Cardinal shortstop. Contreras had a base hit in the game. Goldschmidt going 2 for 5 with a run scored. I mentioned Donovan, the only Cardinal tonight with a 3-hit game, and he also reached base via walk. Donovan on base 4 times. He's just been fantastic for the Cardinals. Got his batting average up to 270 and his OPS north of 750 now. And I can remember when he was mired down around the 660, 670 mark that we see a guy like Paul Goldschmidt at. So that would maybe be the way that it could make sense to kind of reinstill that right, left, right of everything, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I appreciate that Ollie Marmol didn't kind of adhere to what the tenets of that sort of lineup had been, because he recognized coming in, look, there's no better spot for Gorman than 8th right now because of how significantly he has struggled. And that led to a Carpenter, Gorman, Ciani 7 through 9, which is 3 lefties in a row. But it just doesn't matter to the extent that you can avoid doing it in your lineup when you see guys like Gorman struggling the way that he has. I like that. I think it's the perfect blend of I'm not sitting him because I recognize that he has the ability to change the game with one swing in a way that Fairmean does not, that Brandon Crawford very rarely can do, but usually does not. And honestly, I credit Ollie for making the move and bumping Gorman down as low as he humanly possibly could. And it set up the moment for the bases loaded with Nolan Gorman tonight where he was able to come through, hit the grand slam, goes 2 for 4. And it was funny, too, that Ollie evidently sort of predicted this. I'm reading this story from Jake Krause of MLB.com. I believe he's on the road covering this week's series in Pittsburgh. I think that might be a result of a weekday series off for John Denton of MLB.com, Cardinal beat writer, who I kicked his ass in pickleball yesterday, of course, me and Daniel Guerrero of the Post-Dispatch. That was a lot of fun. John Denton usually beats everybody at pickleball. We went out to, well, they're not a sponsor, but I'll say anyway, Chicken Pickle, or Chicken and Pickle, something like that, out in St. Charles. And that was a good time. But finally, I got a win over John Denton in pickleball. That guy goes hard. and teases me about his Tennessee Volunteers winning the baseball championship, all that kind of stuff. I can't take it as a Mizzou boy, so I had to get it over him somehow or another. And his partner was Kevin Ryans, who is with Fox 2 and does a nice job. But we just found a way to get John Denton, which felt pretty good. But anyway, Jake Krause is, I think, covering this series for MLB.com, and he posted this in his post-game story, and it was a quote from Ollie Marmol, quote, "I really do believe Gorman will get out of this here soon and will help us in a very, very meaningful way." That was a quote from earlier Tuesday afternoon from Cardinals manager Ollie Marmol about the struggling slugger, who now maybe can use a game like today to hopefully catapult him into some more consistent performance down the line. When Gorman is going, it's like very few others in baseball. Left-handed power, can hit home runs out to all portions of the ballpark, as he showed tonight. This was left of center, and it was a grand slam, just kept carrying. It looked like the center fielder thought he might have a chance at it, but the ball just continued to carry out off of Nolan Gorman's bat. He's just got to find the confidence. And my goodness, and I used it as the thumbnail, but the smiles in the dugout and the way that his teammates rallied around him, that's got to feel good. Nolan Gorman was supposed to be probably number 3 on my list in terms of chief contributors for the Cardinals offensively this season. I'm not sure if 3 would be the answer. If he would have been number 4, maybe behind Wilson Contreras, Goldie Arenado had to be 2 guys near the top. And he's done it in a lot of ways because the 17 home runs is something that nobody else on the Cardinals has matched to this point in the year. But it's just inarguable that he has been a disappointment when you look at the 681 OPS and the 192 batting average. That's just not enough for Nolan Gorman, what he's capable of. The consistency of the approach has got to be something the Cardinals find from him more often. We know that. But look, I'm not taking today's game, seeing him homer and hit a big grand slam and say I'm moving back up in the lineup. He's 8th for me for the foreseeable future. I want to see a more consistent approach more regularly before I then start to buy back into Nolan Gorman in a way that, if I'm Ollie Marmol, would compel me to move him back up into the middle portion of the lineup. But let me know, Cardinals fans, how you're feeling about Nolan Gorman after his big swing tonight. Boy, ever did he need that one, as I know Cardinals fans were pretty down on him, and for understandable reasons, but he is still that same guy capable of changing the game with one swing. It's something we've seen him do a lot of times before. It's just something we haven't really seen him do all that much recently, and the Cardinals ended up needing it. It is frustrating, by the way, that Gibby gives up the 4 runs that he does in the 5th inning, because this is the type of game, or should have been the type of game, that we've talked about for the Cardinals that has been really hard to come by, where you stake out an early lead, you get to an opposing starter. And Mitch Keller is a good pitcher for the Pirates, but the Cardinals found a way to beat up on him. 6 runs, 5 of them earned, 9 hits allowed. The 2 homers were key. That's something that you don't always do against a pitcher that comes in with an ERA in the low 3s. But the fact that the Cardinals were able to do that, they get up 6-0, and then you still end up needing Ryan Helsley to close out the game. You still need to see Jojo Romero, and who I would consider the righty ahead of Kittredge at this point, in at least my personal pecking order. Ryan Fernandez has to come into this game and throw 4 outs. Like, it's great that the Cardinals got this win, but man, if Gibby could have just found a way to be strong for a couple more innings, I think you might have seen a vastly different result toward the end of this game, where maybe Helsley gets saved. And look, everybody's thrilled about his 31st save and breaking the franchise record for a pre-All-Star break save total. But I think in terms of longevity, it would have been nice for this not to have devolved into a 3-run game. But I guess beggars can't be choosers. When you're the Cardinals and you're just trying to find a way to get to a new season high water mark above 500, you're glad you win the game. Once it was 6-4, I guess all bets were off, and this conceivably could have gone the other direction. Was good, though, to see that extra bit of insurance as Goldie came through with a double, and then Brendan Donovan plated him with a base hit. That run came in the 7th inning. That allows you to breathe a little bit easier in the late innings, but I still do agree with the decision to bring Ryan Helsley out for the save. It is a 3-run lead that does qualify as a save, and coming off an off-day Monday, I do think that is a picturesque opportunity to use your closer to be able to lock one down, especially when you've got a guy that's done it 30 times in a row consecutively. I saw some chirping on Twitter of like, really, they needed Ryan Helsley to close out a 3-run lead. Couldn't it have been somebody else? But like, that is the job description of a closer. The other side of it is you'd use John King. He did a nice job. Couple of outs recorded, gave up a hit. Fernandez came in, to rescue that 6th inning and then recorded a scoreless 7th himself. And that's exactly the way that Ollie Marmol plans that out. John King, if he would have been able to get his 3 batters out, you wouldn't have needed Fernandez to come to the rescue in the 6th inning, but they always are going to stagger it based on the matchups and based on where in the lineup are they. So you get a better matchup for Fernandez to come out and finish that 6th inning. He gets the 7th. JoJo with a clean 8th. That might be the biggest story of the night. JoJo Romero getting a clean 1-2-3 inning in the 8th. Only threw 10 pitches. Would like to see him in the strike zone a little bit more because he was working behind in some of those counts. Only threw 5 strikes of the 10 pitches, but ended up clean 1-2-3, which is good to see. His 26th hold of the season. But after that, really you're talking about if it's going to be your next best setup man, Kittredge probably would have been your other option for the 9th instead of Helsley. And I just don't think that the Cardinals are at the point where they can get too cute with things, especially with the way that Kittredge has been kind of struggling recently, allowing more base runners to reach against him. That's Helsley's spot. I'm not going to second guess that one bit. It's just a frustration factor that how many times have we talked about the Cardinals being in a position to potentially save Helsley or save some of those other back-end guys, but then the pitching, whether it's the bullpen or the starter, lets the other team back into the game to the extent that the Cardinals do need full hands on deck at the end. And that's kind of what you saw with Helsley coming in late, and even, as I mentioned, JoJo and Ryan Fernandez having to come into this game. But the Cardinals starting off a road series against a divisional opponent. Pittsburgh is technically one of those teams that's in that mix in the NL wildcard race, but it's been really nice to see the way that the standings have sort of separated themselves a little bit in terms of where the Cardinals are at right now relative to some of those other wildcard hopefuls. Now, a team like the Mets has continued to play really good baseball. They are now a team above 500 who is not currently in a wildcard spot. The Padres have also won 7 of 10, as have the Cardinals. And the Padres are 3 games above 500. Cardinals at 4 games above are sitting in the second wild card spot, and they're only 2.5 games back of the Atlanta Braves at this point. So that first wild card is certainly well within reach for the Cardinals if they can continue on this trajectory. And in the case of the Milwaukee Brewers, they also won on Tuesday night because you basically can't trust the Rockies to do anything right. Rockies had a lead in that game and ended up squandering it and losing 4-3 to Milwaukee. So Cardinals still are not any closer to catching the Brewers within the division. The Cardinals at 6 games back of Milwaukee, 7 back in the win column, 5 behind in the loss column to the Brew Crew. But it feels very good for the Cardinals to be where they are in the wildcard standings. The Mets, as I mentioned, game above 500, not in a wildcard spot, so that harkens back to a couple of weeks ago when everybody, including the Cardinals and Padres, were sub 500, and I said, look, there will be 3 teams in that wild card mix that get above 500 in the National League. It's not going to take 80 wins to get into the NL wild card. It's going to take 83, 84, probably more than that. And already within a couple of weeks, we have seen that start to solidify. But speaking of some of those other teams in that mix, teams like the Pirates are not out of it at this point. But if the Cardinals could really stick it to a Pittsburgh team this week, this would be a crucial time to do it. And I think then the Pittsburgh Pirates go on to face the Mets in a 4-game series after their series with the Cardinals. And this is that time of year where you're leading into the trade deadline. Deals are going to start flying off the shelves, and teams are going to begin to have to decide, are we buying, are we standing pat, or are we selling? And this could be the type of week that, hey, if the Pirates go 1-6, and they've already lost 1 to the Cardinals, let's say the Cardinals get a sweep, and the Mets go 3-4, that's the type of week that if there's a piece to be had on that Pirates team, a veteran, a short-term asset, that could end up being a trade deadline decision maker when it comes to where Pittsburgh is. So right now, you're always kind of playing that Rock'em Sock'em Robots game a little bit where it feels like you've got these opponents. A lot of them are in that NL wildcard mix with you. And if you can knock their block off a little bit right now, you can almost convince them, yeah, maybe this isn't our year. We ought to consider being sellers rather than trying to compete and add to the muddied list of teams that is aiming to make a wild card. This thing could space out very nicely, and the Cardinals could be partially responsible for ensuring that happens. Right now, you're still looking at the Mets at a game above. The Giants are 2 below. The Diamondbacks 2 below. The Pirates at 4 below. All still within reach. Then you start to get into a tier of team that you're like, okay, what are these guys going to do? The Reds are 40 and 45. They're 5 games under, but still only 4 games out of a wild card spot. If the Cardinals could have really dispatched them over the weekend, we might be talking about the Reds a little bit differently. But the Reds are still within range, and I think with enough talented young players and pitchers, they're probably not going to throw in the towel just yet in terms of looking to sell. And even if they did, I think they have so many young players on their team that are cost-controlled that it doesn't really seem like them turning into sellers is something that makes sense anyway, because the majority of their guys that have value, and I could kind of comb through their roster if I had to, but I would say most of those guys are guys they want to have as building blocks for beyond this year. But the Reds, man, they're still only 5 games under. If the Cardinals had found a way to, honestly, the Cardinals weren't going to beat them in that series because the Reds thoroughly outplayed the Cardinals. But if they had found a way to play a little bit better, maybe the Pirates and the Reds would be teams that could be very soon swept out of the group of contenders. And suddenly it's not a very deep NL wildcard picture the way that it has been over the recent weeks. The Nationals are 7 games under, and they are at risk for sure of falling out of it. Of course, that is the thing I said about the Mets like 2 weeks ago, and now those trends have completely reversed. But the Nationals are 39-46, and they have lost 8 of their last 10, including 3 in a row. And don't look now, Cardinals fans, but the Cubs are in the same boat. They've lost 7 of 10, couple in a row. They are 39-47 and 5.5 games out of a wild card spot, which is currently occupied by the Padres for that last spot. I don't know what happened to the Cubs. I mean, I really thought the Cubs were going to be that chief competition with the Cardinals in terms of trying to find a way to unseat Milwaukee this year, and I thought both teams would finish above Milwaukee in the standings. So I basically got Milwaukee completely wrong. We make jokes about it all the time about how the Brewers continue to win these games. Nobody really knows how they're doing it. If you start locking into the scoreboard watch, you see, they're beating teams like the Rockies who are basically giving games away. Somehow the Brewers keep getting away with it. I don't know how long that's going to continue, but it seems rather sustainable at this point, given that we're more than halfway through the year, and they're still pretty clear of the Cardinals and everybody else in the Central. But I thought the Cubs would be in a much better spot as well, and they are definitely at risk of falling out of the race. I'll be very curious to see what that team does when it comes to their potential movement ahead of the deadline. I just can't believe, looking back, that they signed Craig Counsell. They hired him away from the Brewers. They gave him a massive, massive contract for a manager, which was sort of okay, how important really are managers? Is this that big of a competitive advantage that you need to go and do this? But if you thought it was, certainly that means you're ready to spend some quality money. And it's not that the Cubs didn't spend. They've got the highest payroll in the division this year, but they've also got the worst record as of right now. So that's kind of a situation that's totally up in the air. I know that there are very few, if any, Cardinal fans shedding tears over where the Cubs are right now in the division standings. I'm just commenting that I am surprised by it because I thought they would be a little bit more formidable in terms of their ability to keep pace in the Central right now. But I'm looking at these Cardinals going, all right, the Brewers are going to keep doing their thing, but racking up wins is really all the Cardinals can do. Control what you can control. And there is a decent chance that the Cardinals, in my opinion, find a way to go on a bit of a run before the All-Star break. And the schedule has set up nicely for it. And maybe this is the part where the Cardinals finally start to take advantage. Tomorrow's game, Wednesday's game, is going to be a fascinating one to track as Miles Mikolas is coming back to the mound for the first time since he gave up 10 runs, count them 10, to the Reds last week. His ERA at 5.32. Jared Jones comes into this one with a 3.66 ERA. He's got really good stuff, but I'll be curious to see if Jones, who has been a little bit more gettable recently, is a guy that the Cardinals are going to have a good preparation for. He's really been kind of a breakout candidate within that Pittsburgh organization this season, and a strikeout fiend to be sure. His last start against the Rays, he did go 7, gave up 2 runs and struck out 8. 6 strikeouts in the outing before, though, while giving up 6 runs at Colorado on June 15th. So it's been a little bit more of a mixed bag recently for Jared Jones. He started off really, really strong to begin the season, had a sub-3 ERA around the middle of May, and that number has crept up just ever so slightly to 3.66 as of right now. He's got 93 Ks on the year and 86 innings. He will be a candidate to strike out 10 Cardinals on Wednesday. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But he's also a guy that's given away at least 3 walks in each of his last 4 starts. So if you're the Cardinals, that's just a case of needing to be selective with your pitches that you take, the ones that you swing at, and find a way to get those counts worked up a little higher so that Jared Jones wears down, is maybe out of this game after 5, and the Cardinals can try to make a habit of attacking that Pittsburgh Pirates bullpen, which is the unit that to this point in the season has been a drastic downfall for this Pirates club. 27th in bullpen ERA are the Pirates this year at 4.58. The Cardinals, by the way, checking in with a much more favorable total. They've got that sucker down to 3.53, whittled it down, and they're now 8th in baseball in reliever ERA. Remember, there was a time where the triumvirate was about all you could count on for the Cardinals, and since then, we've seen JoJo Kittredge and even to an extent Helsley be a little bit more wobbly in their performances, but my goodness, the rest of the gang has stepped up. Ryan Fernandez, unbelievable, and whether you think that Chaim Bloom had his fingerprints all over that one or you didn't, I know I always go back and forth joking with the cat about that one. I do think that was a very savvy move by the Cardinal organization. Whoever you want to credit for it, doesn't bother me. But man, Ryan Fernandez as a Rule 5 pickup has been splendid for this team. ERA now in the low 2s, and the list goes on from there with guys like John King, even guys who aren't right now currently on the team like Kyle Leahy. I think it's a shame that Kyle Leahy ended up having to get optioned because of the issues the Cardinals had in terms of just available arms out of their bullpen from a day-to-day basis. But you're going to see Kyle Leahy in the second half. You're going to see more of Chris Roycroft as the dust begins to settle on things. And heck, even if Giovanni Gallegos could find his way back into a role of prominence, if it's something that he earns, he's got to earn it. There's nothing that should be given to him right now. But we've seen a couple of scoreless appearances from him in a row, so we shall see. But hard not to like the way that the Cardinal bullpen is setting things up. But then back to the schedule. Pirates, we mentioned it. It's going to be a big one for Michaelis on Wednesday. 4th of July. I love 4th of July. That or Christmas has got to be my favorite holiday. Please, 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 Mother Nature, give us a break in the St. Louis area and keep the rain away. I know it's not going to happen, but if you could just rain it out early in the day and then let the midday be great and then let people do their fireworks and then you can go back to raining overnight, I would take that. But don't wash this one out, all right? We're crossing our fingers because I know the weather is supposed to be a little gnarly over the next couple of days. But over in Pittsburgh, no reason to think that's going to be the same over there. Palante against Martin Perez on 4th of July, 11:35 a.m., the start time for that game between the Cardinals and Pirates. I love day baseball on the 4th of July. That's what's so awesome about this holiday. And heck, it's on the road, so y'all can watch it on TV. One of these times, man, I would love to do a watch-along. Maybe that's something that I'll add to the channel membership is when I end up doing it, a watch-along that basically a live stream where you guys are watching the game. You know that I'm watching the game with the volume off, and we just kind of talk our way through Cardinals baseball during a game. That's something I still would like to get going, but I don't think it's going to be 4th of July because I will be having beers during that. So anyway, they go to the Nationals thereafter. That's another team that's gettable. They're kind of on the downswing, as I mentioned, and that's a game going to be a 4-game series, rather, that the Cardinals face in D.C. as that thing extends to Monday as well. Kind of an interesting quirk of the schedule there. Cardinals then return home 2 against the Royals and 4 against the Cubs over a 3-day weekend. And next thing you know, you're into the All-Star break. The Cardinals with a big opportunity against some teams that are either worse than them or right there in the mix in the wild card race, or the Royals, who are actually in the wild card race of their own in the AL. This is a spot of the schedule the Cardinals can take advantage of. It's going to take everybody, though. They've had the pitching for the most part. They've had the bullpen really solidify. It's time for the offense to carry the load for this team. I think that is what is owed to the rest of this Cardinal roster. The offense is supposed to be the group carrying them, and it just hasn't been the case. They're still ranked near the bottom of the league in runs scored. Can the Cardinals turn the tide on that over the next couple of weeks is going to be the question. And if the answer to that question is yes, I think when you're coming out of the break, you're going to see a Cardinals team probably neck and neck with the Braves, who they see first series out of the break, and potentially in position for that top wildcard spot to become a reality. And then who knows, as far as the division goes, you keep a watch on the Brewers. But let me know in the comments below, how are you feeling about this Cardinals team now that they are a season-high 4 games above 500? It's been interesting. It's been kind of a wild ride so far in 2024, but it does seem to be, if ever so slowly, trending in a very positive direction. And the Cardinals have not gone on that prolonged losing streak ever since they had the real bad one earlier at the beginning of May, I want to say that it was. They haven't really had that. If they lose a game, sometimes it can be very, very ugly, but they usually keep it to just that one loss, and they come back the next day and play a little better. So how are you feeling? Do you have confidence in this team yet, or do you still need to wait and see for a little more consistency from the offense. That's kind of where I'm at, but I'm curious to see where y'all are at out there in Cardinals land. That's really all I have to say about the big league club as of right now, but as you know, there's also minor league stuff to talk about, and the Cardinals had a very interesting day across their minors, so let's get into it by going down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. So the Memphis Redbirds had an exciting one against my second favorite AAA team, the Nashville Sounds, and the Sounds are the affiliate of the Milwaukee Brewers, but I still love them because I went to the bachelor party there a few years ago for my co-host on the big show, Andy, and we sat behind home plate, and they have an awesome stadium with a giant guitar over the outfield. It's just a really cool setup with the Nashville skyline up behind, so I'm partial to the Sounds. I even bought my son Gabriel a Nashville Sounds t-shirt, and that was before I think really anybody even knew about Gabriel's coming into existence. My wife was still pregnant at the time, and it was a 2T, man. I bought him a size 2T. He turns 2 in September, and that thing is already kind of small on him. Time flies. It's ridiculous. Any parents out there know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, I want to start with Memphis because they got a 13-11, crazy score, win in walk-off fashion thanks to a walk-off home run by Thomas Saggese, who had an unbelievable day for the Memphis Redbirds, going 4 for 5, scoring a run, hitting a home run to walk it off. In extras, he ends up with 3 RBIs on the day. Crazy game for Thomas Saggese and the Redbirds. Saggese has struggled, though, this season. I know when he came over, he was lighting the Texas League on fire last year when the Cardinals acquired him at the deadline, and that's at Double-A. And then he came to Springfield, was playing really well there. Once he got elevated to Memphis, though, it started to maybe hit the skids. And even after an amazing day like today, the OPS still only 701 for Saggese on the season. Batting average at 241. So still a ways to go to be, I think, viable for a call-up. But I will make note of this, playing some shortstop. That's the position he saw tonight. I think long-term, as Saggese gets the bat going, he would make a really good backup utility infielder for the Cardinals in 2025 if he can get the bat there to justify it. Get him playing a little bit of shortstop. It doesn't have to be anything super crazy, but could play shortstop to spell Mason Wynn, a day per week, a day every 10 days, something like that. Could play a couple days at second, could play a day at third to spell Arenado. And then Saggese, you don't have to worry about, he's a prospect. You don't really want to have him sitting the bench every day. If he's going to come up to St. Louis, he's got to play. Well, you could find him maybe 3-4 days a week and then pinch hit opportunities that I think would be sufficient. In the modern game, it's not as though everybody that comes up has to be an everyday, 6-day-a-week player. Guys are platoon. Guys play different roles for MLB teams, and I don't think Saggese is such a prospect pedigree that he would not be able to fit into that exact category. So that's just thinking a little bit long-term, but really big day for Saggese. Others in that Memphis game, if you score 13 runs, others were contributing. Raposo, who got a little bit of a stint with the Cardinals earlier this month, or I guess technically last month in June, he was 2 for 4 with a home run, couple of RBIs. Jared Young, first baseman down there, 2 for 3 with 3 runs scored, and an RBI as well. Matt Koperniak has looked really good. This is a guy that could get an outfield call up at some point. He's hitting .321 this season for Memphis with an .883 OPS. He went 3 for 5, 4 runs driven in, 3 total runs scored. He ended up with 2 bombs in this game, a pair of homers for Matt Koperniak, who's got that nearly a 900 OPS. So I don't really know that that's going to be imminent for a call-up, but if there's an injury, if there's something that happens, I don't think he would be too far off from being considered by the Cardinals. Unfortunately, I don't have a positive update to give for Jordan Walker, as he was 0 for 4 tonight. Did score a couple of runs, reached base via walk, and probably a fielder's choice given that he scored twice. But that OPS still 689 for Jaywalk. We're still looking to see the consistency from him. Victor Scott, though, 1 for 4 and had a run scored and 3 RBIs as the leadoff man. Still a ways to go, though, for him and his OPS as well. That's the good news. The other good news is that the Springfield Cardinals, the Double-A affiliate, got a win on Tuesday night, 7-3. Winners were the Springfield Birds. Lars Nootbaar checking up with the once and future Cardinals outfielder, 2 for 5 with a run scored. He also had a double in this game. I think he's going to be just about ready here before too long, OPSing .850 this season with the Springfield Cardinals. I think that's the 3-4 games that he's played. He's hitting the ball. That's good to see. Sometimes you see a guy go down for a rehab and they don't really perform, and you're skeptical of what the timing is going to look like when they get back. That was kind of the Dylan Carlson question when he was pretty short with his rehab. Nootbaar at least seems to be performing, and so that's something you can feel pretty good about. Something that we may have some level of concern over, however, and I hate to give negative news when we do the down on the farm, but Cooper Hjerpe was the starting pitcher tonight for the Springfield Cardinals, and he left this game early. 39 pitches is all that Cooper Hjerpe threw, 2 scoreless innings. He was effective, but only left after 39 pitches. Mark Spillane is a Twitter account that I'm reading here out of the Ozarks area. Evidently, Hjerpe was seen. He shook out his left arm after a foul ball in the second inning. Would finish the frame before leaving the game. 10 straight no-hit innings before this start for Cooper Hjerpe, who somehow was not in the updated top 100 prospect list that I saw recently. That's a tweet that I saw from at the Taylor Cruz. National publications are missing out, but don't get it wrong. Cooper Hjerpe is a top 100 prospect in baseball. I think that's probably true. He's been performing really well in Double-A, and there's only one step between Double-A and the big leagues. So if you go 10 no-hit innings and was good again tonight before ended up having to vacate the premises due to whatever, if there was an injury situation going on, that unfortunately is going to be something that the Cardinals at the minor league level will have to address. Hopefully we do see Cooper Hjerpe end up being okay, but that is the news that I have for you tonight. But that's all from Down on the Farm. Appreciate you guys for listening. I hope you enjoy that segment. I'm going to continue to talk minor league stuff as it'll keep us all a little bit more informed about what's going on and who could be the future coming up to St. Louis down the line. So that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate you guys, as always, for sticking with me. We'll talk to you next time on Be Safe Daily. Peace.